Over 10,000 shipping containers are sitting idle at U.S. ports right now, filled with the goods you shop for every day, from electronics and cars to the groceries on your table. The ports of Los Angeles, Long Beach, New York, all choked with cargo, creating a logjam that's echoing through the entire economy. Is this just a temporary hiccup, or the warning sign that global trade as we know it is on the verge of breaking down? I'm Your Name from Crash Files USA, and today we're diving deep into how 10,000 containers ended up stranded, who's caught in the crossfire, and whether this chaos is finally the end of an era or just the beginning of a new normal. Because if you've noticed empty shelves, rising prices, or weeks-long delays on your orders, you're already feeling the shockwaves of this crisis. Because if you've noticed empty shelves, rising prices, or weeks-long delays on your orders, you're already feeling the shockwaves of this crisis. Narration. Picture this. Massive container ships, some over 1,200 feet long, anchored off the California coast, waiting days or even weeks to unload. In the ports themselves, towering stacks of colorful containers stretch as far as the eye can see, turning terminals into labyrinths of steel and cargo. In 2021, the twin ports of Los Angeles and Long Beach handled a combined over 19 million TEUs, that's 20-foot equivalent units, and the surge has continued into recent years. But instead of flowing smoothly onto trucks and trains, many of those containers are just sitting there. On some days, over 40 ships have been anchored offshore, waiting their turn. A dramatic contrast to pre-pandemic times when delays were measured in hours, not weeks. And it's not just the West Coast. The ports of New York and New Jersey have also reported record backlogs, as shipping lines desperately rewrote vessels in search of quicker unloading. Across the country, terminals are struggling to keep pace, leading to longer dwell times, skyrocketing storage fees, and frustrated truckers waiting endlessly for their loads. The port chaos is more than just a shipping problem. It's become a national crisis, touching everything from big business to the smallest neighborhood stores. So how did it come to this? How did the world's most advanced ports end up buried under mountains of cargo, with ships waiting endlessly offshore? The truth is, there's no single reason. It's a perfect storm of overlapping crises, and it all started with the pandemic. When COVID hit in early 2020, factories across Asia shut down, slashing global production overnight. But as restrictions lifted, demand roared back, flooding shipping networks with orders for electronics, appliances, and goods people wanted for their stay-at-home lives. This sudden spike blindsided ports worldwide, leaving them scrambling to handle cargo surges they'd never seen before. Then came another blow: labor shortages. Dock workers were stretched thin, sometimes sidelined by COVID protocols, while the trucking industry faced a crisis of its own. In 2023, the U.S. was short an estimated 80,000 truck drivers, a shortage driven by aging workers, retirements, and fewer young recruits entering the field. Without enough drivers, containers simply piled up at ports with nowhere to go. Even when workers and trucks were available, the ports themselves couldn't keep up. Many terminals were designed for normal traffic, not the record-breaking volumes seen in recent years. Yard space filled up, containers got buried, cranes couldn't reach them fast enough, and outdated software systems struggled to coordinate the chaos. Then there were surprises that nobody saw coming, like the Suez Canal blockage in 2021, when the Ever Given got stuck sideways and held up nearly $10 billion of cargo every day. More recently, drought conditions have threatened the Panama Canal, forcing shipping lines to reroute vessels thousands of miles out of the way. Add in geopolitical tensions, shifting trade routes, and the global shipping map has been completely redrawn in just a few years. And finally, the surge in consumer demand turned a bad situation into a disaster. E-commerce exploded during the pandemic. Companies that once used just-in-time inventory now face supply chain chaos when goods don't arrive on schedule. In short, the world's supply chains were never built to handle this combination of shocks all at once. And now it's businesses and everyday people like us who are paying the price. The chaos at U.S. ports isn't just a shipping industry problem. It's reaching right into your wallet, your workplace, and your daily life. Shipping rates have gone through the roof. Before the crisis, moving a 40-foot container from China to the U.S. West Coast cost around $2,000. At the height of the congestion, prices shot past $15,000, and though they've dropped somewhat, they remain far above pre-pandemic levels. Businesses everywhere are paying more to get goods in, and those costs often trickle down to you and me. Electronics, appliances, furniture, even cars have become more expensive or harder to find. Electronics, appliances, furniture, even cars have become more expensive or harder to find. And it's not just big corporations feeling the squeeze. Small businesses have been hit the hardest. Many of them don't have deep pockets to absorb skyrocketing shipping fees. A single delayed shipment could mean empty shelves, lost customers, or even closing shop for good. Then there's the bullwhip effect, a chain reaction where delays and shortages ripple upstream, causing companies to overorder just to be safe. But overordering can flood the system later, swinging from empty shelves to massive gluts of inventory that nobody can sell. All these impacts add up to higher prices, economic uncertainty, and everyday frustration for millions of Americans. The backlog of 10,000 containers might sound distant, but it's a crisis touching every one of us, every time we shop, work, or simply try to keep life moving. The port crisis isn't just an economic disaster, it's an environmental time bomb. While those ships wait their turn to unload, they're burning fuel around the clock, pumping tons of emissions into the air. In Southern California alone, anchored vessels have become one of the region's largest sources of air pollution during peak congestion periods. The idling ships emit nitrogen oxides, sulfur oxides, and particulate matter, contributing to respiratory issues and worsening climate change. And it doesn't stop at the ports. Rerouted shipping lanes, like detours around the drought-stricken Panama Canal, mean longer voyages and even more carbon emissions. Trucks waiting for hours burn diesel unnecessarily, and congested highways around ports become hotspots for dirty air and noise pollution. To fight this, ports like Los Angeles and Long Beach have pledged to become zero-emission hubs, investing in electric cranes, cleaner trucks, and shore power for ships. But transforming massive ports takes years and billions of dollars, and progress has been painfully slow while the crisis rages on. For now, the shipping backlog isn't just clogging supply chains. It's leaving a dirty environmental footprint that could take years to clean up. Faced with thousands of containers clogging ports and ripple effects across the economy, governments and the shipping industry have scrambled for solutions. In late 2021, the Biden administration launched a supply chain disruptions task force, aiming to clear backlogs and keep goods flowing. One major push was to keep ports like Los Angeles and Long Beach running 24/7, hoping round-the-clock operations could ease congestion. But working around the clock sounds simpler than it is. Truck drivers, warehouses, and rail yards also need to match those extended hours, and many simply couldn't keep up. Meanwhile, California ports have announced expansion projects to add space for containers and improve truck flow. The rail industry has stepped in too, moving more cargo inland to clear space at the ports, but even rail yards hit capacity limits, causing delays to ripple deeper into the country. Another big effort is digitization. Ports and carriers are testing new data-sharing systems to track cargo better, predict bottlenecks, and improve scheduling. The idea is simple. If everyone in the supply chain can see the same information, they can work together to avoid gridlock. But progress has been slow, hampered by incompatible systems, privacy concerns, and complex union negotiations over how new tech might affect jobs. Despite all these efforts, clearing 10,000 containers and preventing the next crisis has proven far harder than anyone imagined, and that leaves a crucial question hanging in the air. So, is this truly the end of global shipping as we know it, or just a rough patch we'll get through? The truth is, experts are split. Some believe the worst is behind us. Shipping rates have fallen from their dizzying peaks, and wait times at U.S. ports have started to improve. As consumer spending cools slightly, the frenzy of imports has eased, giving ports a chance to catch up. But others warn that what we're seeing isn't a one-time crisis. It's the exposure of deep flaws in our global trade system. U.S. ports were already stretched thin before the pandemic, running close to capacity with little margin for shocks. And now, new threats loom on the horizon. Geopolitical tensions, climate disasters disrupting key trade routes, and the lingering risk of future pandemics. Clip: footage of Suez Canal, Panama Canal, droughts, news clips on geopolitical conflicts. Experts argue that reshoring and regional manufacturing might be the only way to protect supply chains from these global shocks. But reshoring isn't cheap, and it could mean higher prices for consumers in the long run. One thing is certain. The global shipping model we relied on for decades, cheap, fast, just in time, isn't coming back in the same form. Whether this is truly the end depends on how fast ports modernize, how industries adapt, and how prepared we are for the next global shock. So where do we go from here? What will shipping and our economy look like in 2025 and beyond? Many experts say the worst of the chaos has passed. Port congestion is easing, and container prices have dropped dramatically from their pandemic highs. But even as ships move faster, the scars of the crisis remain. Businesses and governments have realized that relying too heavily on distant factories makes supply chains vulnerable to global shocks. That's why companies are shifting towards nearshoring, moving manufacturing closer to home in places like Mexico, Central America, and even back to the U.S. Nearshoring offers shorter shipping times, lower risks of political disruption, and a buffer against future crises, but often at higher costs. Meanwhile, ports are investing in new infrastructure, more storage space, faster cranes, and digital tracking systems designed to spot bottlenecks before they spiral out of control. Meanwhile, ports are investing in new infrastructure, more storage space, faster cranes, and digital tracking systems designed to spot bottlenecks before they spiral out of control. Rail networks and trucking fleets are being modernized to move cargo inland more efficiently and with fewer emissions. Yet despite all these improvements, industry insiders warn that one big shock, like a new pandemic, a cyber attack, or extreme weather, could send the system back into turmoil. The future of global shipping is likely to be more regionalized, more expensive, and far less predictable than before. For consumers, that might mean fewer shortages, but also higher prices as the cost of resilient supply chains gets built into everything we buy. One thing's for sure, the days of cheap, frictionless global trade are gone, and the next few years will decide what replaces it. Over 10,000 containers sitting stuck at U.S. ports have become more than just a shipping problem. They're a warning sign that global trade is far more fragile than we ever imagined. The crisis exposed deep cracks in a system built on speed and low cost, revealing how easily a few shocks can send the entire world into chaos. While ports and governments are fighting to fix the mess, the reality is clear. The way we move goods around the planet is changing forever. Whether this is the end, or the beginning of a smarter, more resilient supply chain, depends on how fast we learn from this crisis. One thing's certain, the story of those 10,000 stranded containers is still being written. Have you felt the effects of the shipping crisis? Higher prices, empty shelves, delayed deliveries? Drop a comment below and share your story. I'd love to hear how this has impacted your life or business. And if you're fascinated by how global events shape everyday life, subscribe to Crash Files USA for more deep dives into the forces shaping our world. Thanks for watching. And remember, what happens out there on the oceans doesn't stay there. It always finds its way back to our shores.